presence and living with authenticity, we can create positive change in the world, and it starts within each one of us. Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. Mondays at noon on CITR 101.9 FM, Vancouver.
Hello and welcome to Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body,
Join
and
Team
soul.
Power Set an energy conservation.
So we have John Gray, PhD. He is on the show today, and we're going to be discussing a book that we've already covered, 5-Minute Relationship Repair, Quickly Heal Upsets, Deepen Intimacy, and Use Differences to Strengthen Love. So we spoke with Susan Campbell, who is the co-author, a few weeks ago, and now John is here. And John is a relationship coach specializing in intensive couples retreats. He also trains couples therapists in a state-of-the-art approach that integrates the latest neuroscience and attachment research. And he's taught communication workshops at Esalen Institute, University of California at Berkeley, Stanford, and Scripps Institute. And he lives in California. So welcome to the show, John.
Hey, thank you, Marie.
Thanks for being with us today. So we have talked about 5-minute relationship repair, but I wanted to talk more about the concept of vulnerability. But just in case someone new is listening, can you tell us a little bit about what 5-minute relationship repair is all about and why you decided to write the book?
Sure. Well, the bottom line is the question, why do some couples remain happy in love most of the time, long term, while other couples seem to fall into some predictable traps? At least, unfortunately, these were not predictable to them. That's why they fall into it. They're kind of unconscious traps where over time there's more and more upset and less positive, authentic, heartful connection. And what we find when we look at the difference between these two types of couples, and we might call them secures versus insecures to apply a kind of technical term to it, securely functioning couples stay feeling connected, and they're able to talk about anything and feel safe. They're able to deal with the little glitches that always occur in relationships, no matter how good they are, little asynchronies like somebody wants to do one thing, the other person wants to do a different thing. They're able to work these things out and notice if one or the other of them starts feeling distressed or triggered in the least, and they will stop and handle those triggers and repair them very quickly. Insecurely functioning couples don't really know about repair. It's a skill that's vital to keep everything feeling connected and feel authentic. Authentic meaning you can just show up the way you are vulnerably, and that's where vulnerability ties in. Insecure functioning couples tend to not go into vulnerability. They go into kind of automatic defensive patterns. You might relate this to the more primitive brain that goes into fight, flight, or freeze. So they start acting out these patterns of fight or flight, and they're not able to communicate successfully, so they just make things worse. Does that kind of tie it together for you?
It does. It's actually interesting because that's one of the things I'm working on right now is communicating things in the moment, because as just one example, last week I was out with my boyfriend and we were in a social situation and he was spending more time talking with this other woman than me. Okay. Yeah, and right. I knew in my logical mind that he was just being social. He would never want to do anything to disrespect me or anything like that. And so I felt that discomfort, but I didn't say anything in the moment because I didn't want to be a pain. I didn't want to cause any tension. And also I was busy talking, like there were a lot of distractions, so I just distracted myself. But what I noticed is that it built over time. It
does, because the limbic system, this primitive brain, if it isn't repaired, that is, if the two of you don't co-manage each other's states of distress, this alarm will start ringing louder and louder, and then the brain will start constructing familiar insecure stories like, well, maybe he's interested in something about her, maybe, and all this stuff starts triggering these core fears that we all have on some level, and hopefully they don't get triggered, all that much, of abandonment or rejection, not being good enough, not being lovable. Things we're carrying forward from really deep places in childhood that we may not have fully healed. And I actually look at the couple system, the adult couple system, as the most resourceful place to actually heal these old fears from childhood, because now we are the significant others for each other, and we can heal those together. Mm. So it's very important to be able to have, for instance, in my retreats, I go through role plays with couples as if they're at a party and this is happening, and I just watch the action. How does each person deal with that? And I look at what would a secure couple do. Actually, a secure couple might actually have the same feelings of, oh, what's going on over there? But they will go toward each other to relieve distress. So maybe she would go over to him and grab his hand. He would welcome that, and they would have a secret little signal. She would squeeze his hand twice, and he would know, oh, okay, no problem. You pull her into the conversation. Make sure the conversation was flowing in all directions. In other words, the female's eyes were not just looking at him, they were also looking at her. They would exit that conversation arm in arm. She would be instantly calmed down without even saying any words about it. They would already go, okay, we can each be vulnerable, we can each have these little flickers of insecurity, and we will handle that for each other. And the more that happened, the more they actually tracked each other in party situations and welcomed anything like that, the quicker they both feel way more secure in all situations together.
Mm. Thank you for that.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. So right now we are speaking with John Gray. He is one of the co-authors of 5-Minute Relationship Repair, Quickly Heal Upsets, Deepen Intimacy, and Use Differences to Strengthen Love. And we're talking about the ability to be vulnerable and communicate your feelings. So what about, because he and I...
Well, that would be, actually, in that little scenario, wouldn't that up your level of vulnerability to actually, in that moment you started feeling that thing, instead of even dismissing it within yourself and kind of bolstering your own, like, okay, this is nothing, but still it's working at you limbically in that primitive brain, building up as it will. Would it be more vulnerable just to go over and grab your guy's hand?
Well, the thing is, I was already holding his hand. We were sitting next to each other.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
So that was part of why I was okay. If he had been across the room talking with her, I might have gone over there and sat next to him. But yeah,
you sense how that would have been vulnerable to do.
Mm-hmm.
Go over and say, oh, and have maybe a secret little hand squeeze that lets him know you're having that feeling.
So what do you do? Because we have some agreements, but he hasn't read your book. He's not really that big into reading books. So How would you recommend presenting the important points in your book to someone who isn't interested in reading it but is still open to the ideas?
Well, I guess one of the ways I would lead the conversation is what would be the advantage to him to start using some conscious tools to work with distress, say. And, he will probably readily agree that he likes the relationship if it's functioning more on the basis of shared happiness than if it was dealing with triggers and distress. And then you can come in with, well, your ability to maximize shared happiness as a couple is also dependent on your ability to manage anybody's distress, and there are very simple tools to do that are far simpler than staying up all night talking about stuff. Are you interested in knowing a couple simple tools? And then you could actually just make the presentation yourself out of the book. For instance, the repair statement, you could just teach them how to do that, and with very minimal reading, and just show them how it actually works better, how it's efficient. It's an efficient way of handling distress or healing triggering events. Because guys, for the most part, like to get results. They like to do well, to have tools, to use them efficiently and quickly get results. And that's what the book's all about.
Well, thank you, John. Would you talk a little bit, you mentioned tracking each other at parties, and I kind of mentioned this to him, and he doesn't really get why that's important. He's very introverted, and so the idea of checking in with each other doesn't really appeal to him that much. So why is that kind of thing important?
Well, it goes to using the couple system, being a couple, how to be a couple and be a source of positive resources for each other. And I think anybody would buy into that. Can we let our couple system, would we want it to be a place where we get replenished instead of depleted? Would we want it to be a place where we can go celebrate our victories together, get our wounds licked together, really maximize our ability to feel resourceful, not just with each other, but carry that out into life? Can we use the couple as a foundation for that? That would probably be the first kind of discussion to have, to get an overview, of, like a general philosophy. What's our mission statement as a couple? Why are we doing this? Because you could probably point out to him, certainly being a couple, you're going to run into a lot of little glitches, because that's just part of it. And in a way, you could consider those opportunities to strengthen yourselves as a couple. So I would go from an overview to see if you can kind of enroll in that basic principle, because often when I start working with couples and they come in, they have lots of issues, I ask them, why are you actually together as a couple? What does that really serve for each of you? And it's not until they begin to realize that the couple system is really, in a biological sense, it's a safety system, a safety security system. It goes all the way back to caveman days, really, that the couple system is a survival unit. We're in the foxhole together. To start getting that feeling, because if he's introverted and he tends to be more like an island, or we talk in the book about the avoidant attachment style and related to childhood experiences, well, it's important to respect and know that you're not trying to change his personality. You're trying to work with it in a way that works for both of you, and to really bring him into that way of thinking about it.
Cool, thank you. I can tell that, I don't know if you work directly with Dr. Stan Tatkin, but I can hear some of
yes,
the
I do. In fact, I'm one of Stan's trainers to train therapists in that model.
Ah, okay. I was wondering in your bio if that was the PACT method that you were teaching.
Yeah. I've been helping Stan develop that curriculum over the last several years, and now we're delivering it to new students, to new therapists, seasoned therapists for the most part.
Awesome. Well, I've spoken with Dr. Tatkin about this guy that I'm with now, and so he's actually, like, his input helped, and things are going much better. So.
Yeah, good. Well, that's the spirit of our book as well. We draw a lot from Stan's. There's a blend. There's a few of us doing this kind of attachment-based work and sharing ideas and building upon them.
Awesome. Well, we are speaking right now with John Gray. He is the author of 5-Minute Relationship Repair, Quickly Heal Upsets, Deepen Intimacy, and Use Differences to Strengthen Love. And this is CITR 101.9 FM from unceded Musqueam territory here in Vancouver, British Columbia on the University of British Columbia campus. And we'll be back with more Synchronicity in a moment. Welcome back to Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Bernard, and we are speaking with John Gray. He is the co-author of 5-Minute Relationship Repair, Quickly Heal Upsets, Deepen Intimacy, and Use Differences to Strengthen Love. And John, so you do intensive couples retreats?
Yeah, I do them in Northern California, just north of San Francisco in the wine country of Sonoma County. And my website, if anybody's interested, is soulmateoraclecom. And there's a fun little thing on that site called the Soulmate Oracle, lightly called that. It's kind of an interactive self-help tool.
Cool, that sounds like fun. Is it like...
It is.
It sounds like tarot cards or something.
I was inspired by tarot because of the way that kind of system and approach can kind of deliver insightful messages, and then you can kind of roll with those messages. So I created a deck of 64. You could even call them flashcards for different awarenesses to have in relationship. And these different awarenesses could help you have a new perspective on any issue you're experiencing.
Cool. Now I want to go there on the next break.
It's
Check
fun.
it out.
Yeah. And the artwork for the cards.
Hello, John? Oh, can you repeat that? You
Hello?
just broke up for a second there.
Oh, I'm sorry. The artwork is Tibetan on the cards. Yeah.
Cool. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
so
everyone
I'm
check that out.
hoping this
soulmateoraclecom.
phone system is working.
It sounds fine so far. Yeah.
Okay. If not, I got 3 bars on my cell phone.
Okay.
Perfect. I'm a rural.
Oh.
Yeah. You there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Okay. So, John, would you talk about the difference between the core feelings and the stories we tell ourselves?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You could call it a core question. First of all, it's important to see how feelings, when you're having feelings, especially
Hey, John.
relationship.
I'm gonna ask you to call back from your cell if you can. I'm gonna go to a break because you keep breaking up.
Okay.
Okay, we'll just play another ad and we'll be back with more synchronicity in just a moment. All right, welcome back to Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. Hopefully we've got the technical problem sorted out. Johnny, there?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about the difference between core feelings and the stories we tell ourselves.
Right. So it's important to distinguish actually 3 things. There's core feelings, and then there's secondary reactive feelings, and then there's the story. So core feeling, an example would be your partner does something and you start to feel a little afraid of abandonment. That comes up in you. Or a little pain, heart pain associated with it, a little sadness. Those would be very soft, tender, vulnerable feelings if you were to state them directly. And most people have trouble stating those directly because they make you feel kind of small and maybe, weak in a way, depending on your beliefs. So instead, a secondary feeling comes up in the nervous system that comes more out of that fight-flight center of anger, say. So rather than feeling small and hurt, the system wants to protect the self from feeling small and hurt. So instead, up comes anger or some kind of defensiveness or dismissiveness. And that's an attempt to protect the self from feeling these deeper feelings. The story will come up in the mind along with those reactive feelings that kind of simultaneously sort of justifies the self and makes it about the other person. So usually there's some kind of blame story. But if you really listen to the stories carefully, you might hear indications of the core fears. Like a very common story is, well, I just come last on the list for this other person. My mate, work is more important. And then you can go into that whole litany of complaints trying to express that to your partner out of a kind of anger or frustration state, which is a reactive feeling, and never just say, hey, I'm hurting here. I'm a little afraid that I'm not important to you. Is that true? And if you do it from a vulnerable place, a heart-centered place, 9 times out of 10, and maybe 10 out of 10, it'll tend to, instead of making your partner feel defensive, it'll soften their hearts and they'll want to come toward you and reassure you that it's not true, and that repairs it. Does that make sense, those different levels?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I just noticed because with the example I gave of being out at that social situation, that it's almost like, I've been working on this stuff for a while now, and I've had conversations with him and about this kind of stuff. But in the moment, like I felt that feeling, but I felt like, oh, well, you're just overreacting. He wouldn't do that to you. And rather than address it right away, I just jumped into a conversation with someone else. And like we have these judgments about whether we should have these feelings or not, or whether we're being irrational. And so then I think it's much less likely that we'll feel comfortable addressing it immediately because of our judgments.
Right. And there may even, well, let's be logistical as well. There may be situations like social situations where it's going to be quadruply uncomfortable to be vulnerable like that. And so a lot of these vulnerability skills and tools are best developed first and strengthened in private with just the two of you. You might want to have a public signal, like squeezing each other's hands and getting a squeeze back, which you've already pre-agreed signifies, we will take care of this. I'm right here with you. I accept your insecurity, and we'll handle it softly and gently once we get home. And then once you get home, that you find your safe place if you want to make something like that, and have a process to just simply open up and clear that. In the book, 5-Minute Relationship Repair, it actually was called that because there's a 5-minute script that leads you through exactly the words to say that are underneath the reactive level into the vulnerable place, even reports the story that came up in your mind, and gives your partner an opportunity and a simple script to very quickly reassure you and repair it. And each time you do that, actually it rewires your brain so that you're less insecure in the future. So it has a double impact of making you feel closer and more authentic in the moment, and really changing your relationship, rewiring it for secure functioning.
Now, John, you mentioned getting home and talking about it after, but that was part of the problem. We don't live together. He was leaving town for the weekend, and he only had about an hour there. So it kind of amplified the distress. Like in the moment I was fine, but then once he was gone, I started thinking about it. And
Of course. That's the problem with not handling things. It'll start, working you on its own. So, if you guys had an agreement as a couple to handle each other's distress as quickly as possible, to repair things as quickly as possible, you might have found a little private space just to go off to and quickly just work with that, with the right tools, of course, so that you could just reset each other's brains right there. Because, if somebody leaves town and you've got a little bit of something going on that's insecure, your brain will the alarm will keep ringing, and the stories will get worse and worse over time. And then by the time he's back, it would be seem quite large, like a survival thing even. And that's so common, right?
Yeah, it's so crazy because it was just this little thing, and I knew, because I felt like, well, you're being illogical. You know that he loves you. You know he wouldn't disrespect you, but that feeling's still there. And then it's like unconsciously just looking for all of this evidence. It's almost like the feeling needs to be looked at, or it will bring up more evidence to prove to you that it's important.
It's true. That's exactly, you can think of it as, broadly speaking, there's two brains. There's our higher brain that can be logical, and you're obviously using your higher left brain to try to reason with yourself about this. Unfortunately, the wiring doesn't go down into this deeper, more primitive brain that has this survival alarm. And once that alarm is triggered, it's important to work with it as quickly as possible in these healing ways that we have in the book, some of which involve not even words so much as just holding each other and letting your bodies balance out that little bit of activated energy that's in the body. It's actually in the body first. In other words, the alarm system is controlling functions of the body. That's its job. It's in there that primitive brain is keeping your heart going at a certain speed. It's keeping you breathing automatically, digesting your food. It's working your immune system. It's doing all these body-based things. And so if it goes into an alarm state, your body will go into this fight-flight state. Your higher brain will get wind of that, and no matter how much you were trying to stay logical and, think of gratitudes and positive messages, that's going to start taking over that higher brain. That body state will start influencing your thinking, and then the story will get bigger and bigger, trying to explain why you're in this body state. Well, I'm in this body state. I'm all alarmed because he really doesn't care. Everything else is more. And by the time he gets back into town, the story has really gotten quite large.
Yeah. Well, thankfully we were able to talk.
It would have been great if you just hugged for 3 minutes before he left. Take him to the airport and hug him goodbye and look into each other's eyes and say the greatest thing that ever happened. And that probably would have taken half or three-quarters or maybe all of the alarm away.
No, yeah, it was, well, we dealt with it. It's not the end of the world, but I just noticed how, pardon?
Of course, but you're noticing these patterns that if you're not conscious with them, like you're being, they can take over. They can become big deals. I mean, any little incident like that, and all couples have these kinds of things. They're like you're walking along the road to happily ever after, hand in hand, and somebody suddenly gets a pebble in their shoe, right? And it's a mild thing. If you can stop and shake it out, great. It's gone. Now you're walking along hand in hand. There's nothing happening that's of any kind of distressing nature. But if you don't know how to stop and shake out the pebbles consciously, like you're doing with him, pretty soon they're going to these pebbles will start forming into rocks because the mind will start generalizing these patterns if they're not handled. A lot of people just say, this is nothing, it'll pass, we'll feel better tomorrow. And it's like not dealing with it, put it on the carpet, avoid it, but it starts building up unconsciously. So pretty soon, it's like you're walking along with rocks in your shoes, and it gets harder and harder to do that. Someday they might become boulders, and you'll say, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to have that fundamental skill to be able to stop, shake the pebble out, or in other words, 5-minute relationship repair. Just to be able to stop and repair these little glitches, because they're really nothing.
But you really have to train yourself to address it, because I think those feelings of judgment are so ingrained in us.
Well, they are. They are. We have all kinds of judgments, or I might call them philosophies, about how we ought to be self-sufficient, how we really ought not to be dependent on someone else, how that's being needy, how we really ought to, we're the source of our own happiness, nobody else can do that for us. We have these philosophies that make it awkward inherently for us to be vulnerable. But I want to tell you something interesting. These philosophies came after our fundamental training in childhood, not before. These philosophies are there to explain why we don't reach out. Oh, I don't reach out because I'm self-sufficient, because, that would be needy. I think we all ought to be self-sufficient. I ought to be able to just talk myself out of these triggers myself. That probably reflects back to a childhood where we tried to cry, and we didn't consistently get someone to come hold us. And so we got used to the idea we had to do it on our own somehow, or that they wouldn't pick us up, that we would get dumped. That experience preceded us having language and words. It happened in the first 2 years before we had words. It happened in the right brain. And the right brain got used to these emotional patterns or expectations. Now we grow up, we're 2, we're 4, we're 8, we're self-reflecting, we're starting to have a philosophy of life, of who we are. Well, I'm independent. I don't need anybody. That's great. But that philosophy is like after the fact. And these patterns are getting in the way. These earlier patterns are getting in the way of us being happy together. Just know how to do that interdependently. Because you can be as independent as you want and feel great, but you still haven't learned to be interdependent. Does that make sense?
It does. It's I think it's just a matter of practicing.
Practicing is, well, I worked my way through college as a piano teacher. And as far as I'm concerned, it's all practice. It's just learning some new patterns, knowing how the brain takes in new patterns, simple little things you practice over and over again. You get better and better, and you have new automatics then. And wouldn't it be great if your automatic was just to Stop if either person was in distress, quickly fix it, then move on. Because that can be the pattern. And in fact, couples who are secure automatically, who do that automatically, who probably have those childhoods where they did get help, and so they expect this is how we handle it, and it's all happening almost unconsciously, and they're doing that quick repair. Yeah, they're the ones who basically have it down, and the rest of us have to kind of practice it, because to us it'll seem a little counterintuitive. It'll seem a little awkward feeling. I found time and time with hundreds of couples I've worked with, showing them these simple tools, that awkward feeling is a signpost you're heading in a new direction. And that's important, because if you do what kind of comes naturally, well, you'll get the same results that you always have. So if your results aren't spectacular, it'd be a good idea to go through that awkwardness, that training period, learning how to play one hand at a time as we used to do in piano, and then slowly put those together so you can play the piece.
Thanks for that analogy. I appreciate it. And another thing I'm noticing is when rapport is fine and it's a casual, low-stress situation, I'm really good at eye contact. But I notice when I'm in a vulnerable position with my partner, I really avoid eye contact. Can we talk about the importance of eye contact and how to get better at that?
Oh, for sure. And I'll tell you, I can't count the number of couples that initially come to me after years of distress in their marriage, and they're even questioning if they want to stay married. And one of the things I'm noticing is they're sitting in the room staring at me, telling me all this, and they're not looking at each other at all. And so one of the first things I do is get them looking at each other, and maybe even without words, and I'll see all this activated energy coming up in their nervous systems because they haven't done it for so long. They start laughing, looking away. They want to talk. They want to talk to me. And I just have them sit, looking at me. I keep bringing them back to each other. And as they settle into that eye contact intimacy, that intimate connection, that actually starts reconnecting them as a couple, because this eye contact is vital. It's vital to see what's going on with your partner in the interaction in the here and now, in the present moment. Too many of us are really looking inward at the stories in our minds about our partner, about our relationship. Oh, well, he just doesn't care. And so we see this picture in our mind of our partner rather than our partner right there. So then if we don't see each other, we don't know what's really happening or how to handle the distress together. So one of the big important parts of eye contact, knowing that couples do it less and less, and they even make physical contact less and less as they get more and more distressed. You know, by the time they're walking around with rocks in their shoes, so to speak, they're actually touching each other less, and they're not using these fundamental biological mechanisms that connect us, that make us feel safe and secure. So it's really important to get back into eye contact and make a practice out of eye contact and physical touch, supportive touch. And I'm not talking about sexual touch. I'm talking about emotionally supportive forms of touch. We have a whole chapter in 5-Minute Relationship Repair about practices of getting back in that habit, both with the physical supportive touch and the eye contact. And that itself, without even words, making some commitment to do that, say, 20 minutes a day, 4 5-minute sessions, making eye contact and physical contact, no words. And that's a relief to a lot of people. Well, we don't even have to get into talking about stuff because we don't even know how to talk about stuff yet. But just that direct contact can change things in the nervous system to make you feel more connected and safe and secure. So eye contact is important for that reason. It's also a source of positive stimulation of sharing pleasure. When, say, for instance, you go out to the beach and you're looking at a sunset. Well, if you're an ideal couple, let me ask you a question. Would you have the ideal couple standing about 8 feet away with their hands in their pockets staring out the sun, each as individuals, self-sufficiently? Would that look like a great couple to you?
No.
No. You'd have them standing next to each other, holding each other's hands, right? And into their eyes come the spectacular, multicolored sunset. The pleasure centers of their brains are beginning to pump dopamine, and they're getting excited. I would have them then look at each other in the eyes and deliver that excitement and joy into each other's brains and say, what a magnificent sunset because you're here, and make it really personal. Now you're firing up the pleasure centers of each other's brains, and now you're creating more and more anticipated pleasure with each other. That's really the direction you want the relationship to go in. So eye contact is useful both in creating more and more pleasure together, as well as reducing distress and noticing distress quickly enough so you can reduce it easily. Make sense?
It does, and I think the noticing distress is important too, because like I was saying, when I'm communicating my vulnerable feelings, I kind of look down and I don't. And there's another thing that you have about being specific and brief, because if I'm looking down and I'm kind of rambling about how much, it triggers my fear or abandonment or whatever, and then after a couple of minutes I look up and he's sunken chest and looking down, and I'm like, here? Oh no, now I've hurt him.
Yeah, you've distressed him and didn't notice it. The repair statement in the middle chapter of the book gives instructions to how to speak your vulnerable truth in a very short way that's 20 seconds or 30 seconds at most. And it's a script, and you can write it on a piece of paper. There's a printout that you can get with a free workbook you can download off 5minuterelationshiprepair.com. You print this thing out, you write up, it even helps you figure out what were your core feelings. It really guides you through that. Now you have this script on a piece of paper. What we say is, okay, don't veer from the script. Now you've got the best way to present this, but speak each line into your partner's eyes. So sure, look down for the next line, but speak it up into their eyes, because that's what will transmit the information connectively into their brains, so they will actually be in presence affected by you in the moment. And when they hear the form of the repair statement, which is you're revealing to them your core fears, and you're connecting it into their eyes, you might even see their eyes water. You might see, wow, he really cares. And you might see him leaning forward, trying to even prep himself to reassure you. Because the repair statement, it carefully guides you away from accidentally saying anything that might offend him, might trigger him into thinking he's not good enough, all those kinds of things that we accidentally do when we just look down and try to express ourselves normally, which unfortunately co-triggers the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I did print out, I downloaded the workbook, but I need to get a friend to print it out because my printer's broken right now. Because I feel like I need to carry the script around in my pocket.
Oh, in fact, I've been thinking about and talking to someone about having an app. You can put it on your phone. It'll help you select all the words, and then, you can have it right there. And eventually maybe you could even text your repair statement to your partner. No, I'm kidding about that, but because you really want to deliver it in person through the eyes with as vulnerable a voice tone, as you can get to in yourself. And even the repair sequence is meant to be conducted in a safe place. You go to this place, you're going to spend 5 minutes repairing each of you, because you each get a turn. It's completely fair and balanced. And you know that nobody's going to be, triggering the other person in this space, that nobody's going to accidentally expressing themselves in ways that sound like an attack or a defense or anything like that. It's all kind of laid out for you, how to do that. And, this is a practice that I've done with hundreds and hundreds of couples, and it really works. It's simple, and now we've got it in a self-help form.
I love the idea of the app as well, because we use our phones so much now.
Now, I know. Well, I'm working on the app.
Cool. Keep us posted.
Yeah.
So that's 5minuterelationshiprepair.com, same as the name of the book. And your website is soulmateoracle.com.
Right. That's where people can find out about the retreats and play with the Soulmate Oracle, read through questions and answers I've given to various people about different relationship issues.
Awesome. It looks like
there's
you
a lot
have
of stuff on there.
And you have an ebook as well. I'm on your site now. So.
Oh, yeah. Just for the sign up, get on the mailing list. You can get a ebook called Wiring Your Brain for Lasting Love.
Awesome.
And it talks about the importance of intention. And that's a piece, like I was talking about earlier, what's your philosophy as a couple? And personally, I can go to what's your intention personally around love and relationship? What can you bring into how you do it, how you work with triggering events in a way that promotes your highest intention? And that gets into qualities like growth, presence, authenticity, healing. Even if you want to use words like clarity, enlightenment, if you can bring those higher intentions into how you work with triggering events, it'll guide you. It will guide you to see every triggering event as an opportunity to bring more of that spirit into what you're doing.
Well, it's
so that's what that ebook's about.
Awesome. Well, it's time for one last break before Parts Unknown comes up here on CITR. Right now, we are speaking with John Gray. He is the co-author of 5-Minute Relationship Repair, Quickly Heal Upsets, Deepen Intimacy, and Use Differences to Strengthen Love. And you can find out more about the book at their website, 5minuterelationshiprepair.com, or John's personal website we were just talking about is soulmateoraclecom. We'll be back with more Synchronicity momentarily. Welcome back to Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. I am your host, Marie Bernard, and we are speaking right now with John Gray, the co-author of 5-Minute Relationship Repair. And we have just a few minutes left in the show, so I'm wondering what you would like to use the last few minutes for.
Well, I was just thinking again about the nature of these stories that come up in the mind and how they influence us. To do something that I find at the root of most relationship distress and why it keeps building up. And I'll put it this way. You remember the acronym FEAR, false evidence appearing real?
Yes.
You ever heard that? The mind does this. It's like there's a part of the mind, Eckhart might have called it the pain body, that's gathering evidence that our worst childhood fears are true. And then it ends up creating stories in our mind which become consistent filters how we misinterpret our partner. I'm saying misinterpret on purpose. And to many couples, this ought to be a relief, that they've actually been misinterpreting each other. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of couples in depth in retreats, and 100% of them were consistently misinterpreting each other. For instance, one person might have been operating out of the story, I can never get it right, I can never please my partner, there's nothing I ever do is enough. And that triggers these deeper feelings of, well, I'm a failure as a mate, I'm just not good enough for them. And consistently it's been a misinterpretation. It's not been true when they test it out through vulnerable admission that that's their fear. Their partner immediately reaches over and reassures them, you're more than good enough, sweetie. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Similarly, others might misinterpret, well, I'm just not that important to him. I just don't matter. My feelings don't matter. Work's more important. Other things are more important. I come last. And that ancient fear of abandonment that's part of relationship that needs to be handled will get triggered. And again, it's a full misinterpretation. It turns out, when expressed vulnerably, that other partner, he leans over, grabs her, and looks in her eyes and says, you're the most important thing in my life. In fact, everything I'm doing at work is for you. And they clear these misinterpretations out, these stories, these constructs that have gotten in their way of really seeing each other. And so I just want to say, ultimately, these tools to reverse all that are simple, very simple. Repair is simple. Repair of clearing out those misinterpretations, of reassuring and healing those core fears. Repair is simple. It has simple words. You can even guide it with a simple script, as we have in the book. You could call that the simple language of lasting love. A lot of people try to repair things by talking and talking and talking, and they think that's going to help. So they spend hours promoting long explanations and getting into debates and trying to prove they're right and correct the other person's thinking, as if that's really going to go down to this core primitive brain and straighten anything out. Unfortunately, there's no wiring that goes down to deliver that message, so it doesn't. In fact, it makes things worse. So then they give up on trying to repair anything because the tools they're using are not the right tools. The tools are very simple. The misinterpretations can be cleared up immediately if you know how, and that's the point of repair. In real estate, the prime thing that people really say is important is location, location, location. For success in long-term intimacy, it's repair, repair, repair. The one skill you really need. You can't prevent triggering. You can't immediately become secure, but you can repair. And each time you repair in a very simple way, it rewires you to function more securely as a couple. And that's what you can do together, no matter how screwed up your childhood is, where in a way you can repair each other back and even have a happy childhood still. Does that make sense?
It does, and it brings up a question, though, about personality disorders and abusive relationships. One thing I find, and this is yet another reason why it's important to just deal with it right away, if I go off and complain to my friends about what a guy's done, a lot of my friends have been involved with people with severe abusive issues, personality disorders, things like that. And so the first thing they say is, oh, he sounds like a psycho, or it sounds malicious, or he sounds like a narcissist, when it's something so simple. What about if you are involved with someone with a personality disorder or have been? How do you deal with that? Does 5-minute relationship repair work in that kind of relationship?
Well, as I've tested out that particular technology with the variety of couples I work with, and I work with couples on all ends of the spectrum, and we're all on the spectrum. And the extreme ends are personality disorders like narcissistic personality disorder or borderline on the other end of the spectrum. These tools may not be the only tools you need. You may actually need third-party help that's experienced in working with those kinds of things. But getting on board with the idea of these tools would be foundational. Getting on board with the idea that we need to do something consciously together. We need to learn something consciously together. We can't just roll the way we roll here spontaneously, because that's getting us in consistent trouble. Have you noticed that? That itself, would be a huge first step. You might call it, if you're kind of testing out a relationship, in the test out phase, to see if you could get your partner on board with a way of working with triggers and distress. There's a lot of stuff that looks like full-blown personality disorders, which really isn't. So unless you're really a professional and know how to evaluate those things, I wouldn't necessarily just take the word of your friends. Everybody's calling each other narcissists at this point. It's kind of in the common language. But it doesn't mean that it's really a severe problem. If you have somebody who says, yes, I want to be on board with co-learning with you, and that's where the intention comes in. I want to learn to heal and grow with you, and I'm willing to learn tools to do that. I would say that's a primary litmus test if you're with a potential soulmate. A long time ago, I wrote a book called Becoming Soulmates, where I consider soulmating a process, not a finding. It's a process, and you're with a soulmate if you're with somebody who actually does the work of growth and healing around upsets and triggering events. Because now you're in the soul work department together.
Well, the guy that I'm with right now, he didn't say that, like he wouldn't use that kind of language, but he did say to me, I want to meet your needs. And
well, that's big.
It is. Right.
We find out what needs are about. That gives you leverage right into core needs, which is the level below even core feelings and core fears. That goes to the root. Let's talk about what real needs are for safety and security. Needs that include him, by the way. He might likely have the need to feel fully accepted the way he is. And he may misinterpret, say you're expressing your distress accidentally as a complaint. And you think, you're just reaching out, trying to connect with him, explain what's going on with you, but he hears it as a complaint. It may trigger a feeling in him on the core of not being good enough. There it is again. And he has a core need to feel accepted just the way he is and to feel comfortable that he's not in an auditioning stance with you.
Yep.
So that'll get him interested. Yeah, honey, we all have core needs. Like, for instance, you want to feel like you can just be who you are, right? You might hook him with guessing what his core needs are. In fact, you can use the book 5-Minute Relationship Repair as kind of a manual to figure out the reactive pattern on both sides of the net, even what's going on in him. It'll lead you through an exercise to deconstruct a triggering event and guess what his core fears and needs are. If you start guessing that and you're in the ballpark, and we even guide you what are the typical ones for an avoidant attachment style, and you'll be able to see some of the markers and guess what your partner is really about and what's really underneath it. You might hook them in because this will be the first person in the world who have said, yeah, I want you to feel safe to be who you are with me. Because chances are he might have been up against a performance kind of expectation in childhood that he transfers into a relationship.
Well, thank you so much, John. We are out of time. I wish we could talk about this all day. I'm sure.
I do too. That's what I do in my retreat.
Yeah.
As well as the exercises to move people along into secure functioning.
And if you want to do a retreat, you can go to soulmateoraclecom. Spend some time in California building your relationship. Sounds really fun.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, John. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Maria. I've just loved your questions and the opportunity to explore this with you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that was John Gray. He is the author of 5-Minute Relationship Repair. Quickly heal upsets, deepen intimacy, and use differences to strengthen love. And Soulmate Oracle is his website, or 5minuterelationshiprepair.com if you want more information about the book and the workbooks and all that. It's fabulous. I've read it once already, but I'm going to have to go through it again, and pick out more of the tips. It's already making a difference in my relationship, so I highly recommend this book. And thanks again to John. It was such a pleasure. So coming up in just a moment here on CITR is Parts Unknown with DJ Chris-erific, who's standing right beside me, or behind me rather. And I hope you have a wonderful week. I want to send you lots and lots of love as usual. Be well. Love you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.